There was no warning, no indication that everything I thought I knew about my life was about to shatter. If someone had told me that my reality would twist into something unrecognizable in a matter of hours, I wouldn't have believed them. And yet, here I am, sitting alone in a car parked down the street from my own home, questioning everything I've ever known. It started with a single text. "Working late again, don't wait up." It was from my wife, Lila. The thing is, Lila had never been the type to stay late at work. We were comfortable. We had routines, and in a world that often felt chaotic, I liked the predictability of it. But lately, something had shifted. A subtle change in the air, like the faintest change in a weather pattern before a storm. The last few weeks had been filled with late meetings, mysterious phone calls, and the odd hours she kept coming home. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe she was just busy. Maybe I was just paranoid. But tonight was different. When I saw that message, the words felt distant, almost mechanical. It wasn't a request or even a simple notification. It was a command. Don't wait up. Like she was telling me to accept the distance between us, to acknowledge that she had things to do. Things that didn't involve me. I put my phone down and stared out the window. There was a heaviness in my chest, but I couldn't place it. I tried to shake it off, but something about tonight just didn't sit right. I couldn't put my finger on it. It was one of those moments where you start to notice everything out of place, the little details that you normally overlook. The way she'd been distant, the way she'd been leaving early, coming home late, the little things she said but didn't mean. It was like she was slipping away, just beyond my reach. For a long time, I convinced myself that I was being overly sensitive. Maybe she was just stressed at work, maybe there was nothing more to it. But tonight, I decided I couldn't just keep guessing. I needed to know the truth. I needed to see it for myself. I grabbed my keys and stood up. My hands felt oddly cold. I knew this was ridiculous, knew it wasn't something a rational person should do. But here I was, standing on the precipice of something that could change everything. Was I really going to check on my wife? Spy on her? But then, there was that gut feeling. That quiet voice that wouldn't stop, telling me to find the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I drove to her office. The building was empty. It was a quiet part of town, and the office complex was barely lit. I pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine. My hands gripped the wheel for a moment longer than necessary. I hadn't planned on coming here. But now that I was here, now that I was facing the unknown, everything felt different. I looked at the time, 8:47 p.m. She had said she'd be working late, but she hadn't said when she'd be home. I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that she hadn't called me once tonight. Normally, she'd at least send a quick text or leave a voicemail. But nothing. Just that one message. Don't wait up. I tried to convince myself to turn around and go home. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone, turned the ringer off, and got out of the car. The cool night air bit at my skin as I walked toward the building's entrance. I had no plan, no idea what I was going to find. But I needed answers. The front door was locked, but there was a side entrance used by employees. I knew the code. It was something Lila had mentioned once in passing. It had been years since I'd been here, but the door opened without a sound when I punched in the digits. The office space was deserted. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead was the only sound. I moved quickly, trying to be as quiet as possible. I passed a few empty desks, each one telling its own story of abandoned work. I wasn't sure where her office was, but I'd been here enough times to recognize the general layout. I made my way down a long hallway and past several closed doors. At the end of the hall was her office. The light was on. I stopped in front of the door, unsure of what I was hoping to find, or not find. I hesitated for a moment. My heart was pounding. Every logical part of me told me to turn back, to go home and pretend I hadn't done this. But the other part of me, the part one hated, was already reaching for the door handle. I could hear voices from inside. A low murmur, laughter. But the words? I couldn't make them out. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to listen more closely. And that's when I heard it. A man's voice. Deep, but oddly familiar. My blood ran cold. Was this a colleague? Was she just talking shop? But why was there such a strange intimacy in the tone of his voice? The laughter, the way it lingered, the way it felt like they were more than just co-workers. I couldn't move. My mind was racing. Everything I had convinced myself of, every rational explanation, was starting to crumble. This wasn't a normal late night at work. Something else was happening, something I hadn't been told. I slowly backed away from the door, my heart thudding in my chest. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I had to know. What was Lila hiding? What had changed in the last few weeks? And before I could turn to leave, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching the door. I froze. I stood there in complete silence, holding my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps were getting closer, and for a split second, I thought about bolting, running back to my car and pretending I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. As the footsteps neared the door, I ducked behind a nearby pillar, pressing myself against the cold wall. My mind was spinning. What was happening in there? Who was with her? I couldn't see anything, but I could hear enough to know this was no ordinary work conversation. The voices grew louder. The man's voice, deep and smooth, echoed through the hallway. "We can't keep doing this, Alicia," he said. The way he said her name sent a chill through me. It wasn't the casual tone of a coworker or a colleague. It was intimate, urgent even. The kind of tone you use with someone you've shared more with than just a professional relationship. Alicia didn't respond immediately. I could hear the faint sound of her shifting in her chair, and then, finally, she spoke. But her voice, it didn't sound like the voice I knew. It was soft, almost nervous. "I told you, I can't not yet." There was a long pause. I could hear them both breathing. My heart thudded louder in my chest as I listened intently, too scared to leave, but too terrified to stay. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that I could hear them so clearly, or the fact that I didn't know who this man was. Why was he here? Why were they talking like this? It felt wrong. It felt like I was intruding on something I wasn't supposed to know about. But I couldn't turn away. And then, out of nowhere, I heard him laugh softly. "You're afraid," he said. "You're afraid of losing him. But he'll never know. You're too careful, Alicia. You've got nothing to worry about." My stomach dropped. What was he talking about? Losing who? The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It was like every word he said was a stone thrown into a pond, creating ripples in my mind that I couldn't control. Was this about me? Had they been hiding something from me all along? I should have left then. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I was frozen, listening to every word, hoping for some kind of explanation, some kind of closure. Instead, I was drowning in questions, each one darker than the last. But just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard Alicia speak again. Her voice was shaky, almost fragile. "I can't keep doing this. I don't want to lie anymore." There was a long pause. "I'm so sorry, but I can't stop now." The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to shout, to confront her, to demand answers. But I couldn't. I was too far gone, too deep into this mess. I didn't know what I was listening to, but I couldn't pull myself out of it. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the picture they formed was something I wasn't ready to see. I pressed my back harder against the wall, trying to make myself as invisible as possible, but I knew I couldn't stay here forever. I had to leave. I had to get out. But before I could make a move, I heard the door to her office creak open. The man's voice was the first to speak, now sounding a little closer, a little more urgent. "Don't worry, Alicia. You've already made your choice." He sounded almost reassuring, like he was trying to calm her. And then, he said something that made my blood run cold. "We'll be fine, as long as you keep it all under wraps." I didn't move. I didn't dare to breathe. As I stood there in the darkness, it felt like the walls were closing in. Everything was unraveling. All the doubts I had pushed aside for so long, all of it, was now staring me in the face. I needed to know more. I couldn't just walk away. Not now. Not when everything I thought I knew was crumbling. I didn't move. The words kept echoing in my head, like a broken record. "You've already made your choice." Who was he talking about? Was this a decision Alicia had made long before tonight? My mind raced, trying to put together the pieces that didn't make sense. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I stayed frozen in the shadows, my breath shallow, my heart beating so loudly it felt like it would give me away. I could hear the muffled sounds of their conversation still going on behind the door. Alicia's voice was softer now, almost like she was on the verge of tears. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she said, her words heavy with something I couldn't quite place. "Regret? Fear?" The man's voice, calm and soothing, answered, "You don't have to keep hiding. You know what you want, Alicia. Don't let him stand in the way." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What did she want? Was she talking about me? Was this about us? My mind was a blur, scrambling for answers, but I couldn't seem to find the right question. Everything I thought I knew was slipping away, crumbling at the edges. I should have left. I should have walked out of that building and never looked back. But something inside me told me that I couldn't. I had to know who this man was, what this was all about. I had to understand. The door behind me opened with a creak, and I instinctively stepped back, my heart leaping into my throat. I heard the shuffle of footsteps approaching, closer and closer. I pressed myself against the wall, hoping to remain unseen, praying they wouldn't notice me. But then, to my horror, I heard a voice, Alicia's voice. It was sharp, almost panicked. What if he finds out? What if he figures it out? A cold shiver ran down my spine. What did she mean by that? Had she already assumed I knew something? Had I been giving off signs of suspicion that I hadn't even realized? Was I that easy to read? I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing, but everything felt like it was spinning. I felt like I was suffocating in the silence of the hallway, in the distance between the truth and the lies I hadn't been able to see. A moment later, I heard the click of a door opening, the sound of keys jangling. Someone was leaving. I wasn't sure if it was Alicia or the man, but the air felt thinner, like whatever was happening inside that room was about to spill over into my life. I waited, paralyzed. Should I follow? Should I confront them? But then I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. Don't worry, the man's voice said one last time, just before I heard the footsteps fade. You've made the right choice. I'll take care of the rest. Alicia didn't respond, but the silence that followed was enough. I didn't need her to say anything for me to understand what had just happened. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing with 100 different thoughts, none of them making sense. What was the right choice? What had she chosen? And why was I the last to know? I didn't know what to do anymore. I had come here seeking answers, but all I had were more questions. I was lost in a sea of confusion, unable to find my footing. And then the door behind me opened again. The door creaked open behind me, and I froze. My body went rigid, my heart thumping loudly in my ears. I wasn't sure if I was more terrified of being caught or of what I might hear next. For a moment, all I could do was stand there in the dark, my back pressed against the wall, hoping whoever was coming wouldn't notice me. I heard footsteps, slow but deliberate, getting closer. My mind was racing, and I was desperate to make a decision. Should I leave now? Should I confront her? Then, a voice broke through the silence. It wasn't Alicia's. It was the man's voice, the one I'd been listening to. His voice was closer now, and it made my blood run cold. I know you're here, he said softly. I could feel you standing out there. I couldn't breathe. How did he know? Was he watching me? I turned my head slowly, barely moving, trying to stay hidden in the shadows, but the fear inside me was suffocating. Don't worry, he continued, his voice a mix of amusement and something darker. I won't tell anyone you were spying. But we both know why you're here, don't we? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The realization that he knew, that he understood exactly why I was there, made me feel exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. My pulse quickened, and I wanted to run, to disappear, but my feet felt stuck to the ground. Come on out, he said. You're not going to find what you're looking for by hiding in the dark. I didn't move, but the longer I stood there, the more I realized he was right. I couldn't run from this. I couldn't pretend like I didn't hear everything. I had already crossed a line, and there was no going back. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing, ragged and heavy. Then, without warning, the lights overhead flickered on, blinding me for a split second. My eyes struggled to adjust, but I could just make out the figure of the man standing a few feet away, his back to the wall, arms crossed. He wasn't tall or imposing, but there was something about him that made me feel small. His presence was overwhelming, and I couldn't understand why Alicia would be involved with someone like him. You're confused, aren't you? He asked, his voice softer now, almost sympathetic. I know this isn't what you expected, but believe me, you're better off knowing the truth. She's already made her decision. There's no turning back for her. I wanted to shout at him, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. The truth? What truth? What was he talking about? Was he saying Alicia was involved with him? Was she cheating on me? It was hard to accept, hard to even process. I don't understand. I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. What is this? What are you talking about? The man's expression softened, but there was still a strange, unsettling calm in his demeanor. You don't need to understand everything right now, but you need to know that Alicia is making her own choices. She's been given options, and she's decided which one to take. I wanted to shout, to demand that he tell me everything, but something in his eyes held me back. He wasn't going to give me the answers I wanted. He wasn't interested in explaining himself. He was simply letting me know that I was too late, that the decisions had already been made, and I was just a bystander. You can confront her if you want, he said, his voice almost pitying. But it won't change anything. She's already made up her mind. I felt like I was suffocating. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, was crumbling. I was standing there, frozen, not knowing what to do next. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the building. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of everything. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, ready to call Alicia. But something stopped me. Something told me that calling her now wouldn't change anything. That no matter what I said, no matter how many questions I asked, the answers would be just out of reach. Alicia had already made her choice. But what choice was that? And why hadn't I been part of it? I didn't know how much longer I could stand there, lost in my own thoughts, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, everything felt wrong. I hadn't been able to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the images of last night flooded back. His voice, Alicia's voice, the tension. My mind kept replaying the same conversation over and over again, but it made no sense. I had to talk to her, confront her, but deep down, I was terrified of what I might hear. When Alicia got home, it was almost noon. She'd texted me earlier, apologizing for being so late the night before. She said she'd had a long meeting that ran into the early morning. It all sounded so normal, but I knew better now. The text was just another lie. I couldn't look at her the same way, not after what I had heard. She walked through the door, and I stood there, watching her, unsure of what to say. She smiled at me, that warm, familiar smile that I had once loved. "Hey, I'm sorry about last night," she said, her voice soft, almost sweet. I couldn't respond immediately. My chest tightened. It was as if a part of me wanted to scream, demand the truth, but another part of me feared the answer. "Are you okay?" she asked, noticing my silence. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired," I muttered. She walked past me, hanging her bag on the coat rack, and I caught a glimpse of her phone on the counter. For some reason, something about it caught my eye. It was face up, unlocked. My heart raced as I thought about it. Could I really do this? Could I look through her phone? Every instinct told me not to, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know more. I picked it up, my hands trembling. I scrolled through her recent messages, her photos, anything that might give me a clue. Nothing stood out. Just work-related texts, mundane conversations. But then, I came across something strange, an email notification from a service I didn't recognize. It was marked as unread, and the subject line sent a shiver down my spine. "For your eyes only." I hesitated. Something about that email felt like a red flag, but I couldn't just ignore it. I opened the email, and my heart nearly stopped. It was a letter, a detailed, private letter. The tone was formal, but there was something undeniably personal about it. As I read through the words, I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just some work email. It was a message from someone who knew Alicia deeply. "Dearest Alicia," the letter began. "I've always respected the choices you've made, but I think we both know that your commitment is wavering. I hope you understand that the next step we take will change everything. I've made my offer clear, and I trust you'll make the right decision." The letter continued with more cryptic references to choices, decisions, and changes. It was all so vague, but the meaning behind it was clear enough. Alicia was involved in something I didn't know about, something that could tear our lives apart. I put the phone down, my heart racing. Alicia had been hiding something from me, something big. I had no idea what the next step was, but I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut. It was all connected. Everything I'd overheard last night, the strange behavior, the secrecy, it was all part of the same story. She had been hiding something, and I needed to find out what. The email sat there, an undeniable truth that I couldn't escape. My mind raced with questions, but one thing stood out above all the others. Why hadn't Alicia told me about this? Why was she keeping secrets? I couldn't sit with it any longer. I had to confront her. But the fear of what might come out of her mouth, The possibility of the truth destroying everything was paralyzing. Still, I couldn't let it go. When Alicia walked into the living room, she looked at me, her eyes soft with that same smile that once made me feel safe. But now it felt like a mask. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. She was trying too hard to act like everything was fine, and I hated that I had to do this. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I stood up, holding her phone in my hand, the letter open on the screen. "Alicia," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What is this?" Her face faltered, the smile slipping for the briefest of moments. It was like I had caught her in the act of something she didn't want me to see. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but the defensiveness in her tone only made my blood run colder. I held the phone out to her, showing her the email. "This," I said, my voice tight. "What is this about? Who's making these offers to you? Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" Her eyes flickered to the screen, then back to me. For a moment, she didn't speak. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she exhaled slowly, like she was preparing for the inevitable. "Elliot, she began, but the words were caught in her throat. She looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. This wasn't the woman I knew. The woman I loved was confident, decisive. But right now, she looked vulnerable, cornered. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, the anger and hurt I'd been holding back for days now spilling over. "I've been asking myself for weeks why you've been so distant, why everything's changed, but I never imagined this." "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. The admission hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. "I didn't want you involved." I shook my head in disbelief. "Involved? In what? What's going on, Alicia? Why are you hiding this from me?" She took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with something. Was it guilt? "Elliot, this isn't something I ever wanted to happen. But it's complicated." "Complicated," I repeated. My mind was spinning. "What? Are you having an affair with him? Is that what this is about? Because that's what it looks like to me. You're hiding things, you're lying, and you're pushing me away." Alicia looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not like that," she said, her voice shaky. "It's not what you think. It's just, this offer, it's not what it seems. It's not an affair, not exactly." I could barely process what she was saying. "Then what is it? What's going on?" I demanded, my patience running thin. She took a step back, almost like she was physically distancing herself from the weight of the situation. "I can't explain it all right now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I've been offered a chance, something that could change everything. The man you heard last night. He's a part of it. He's part of the reason everything's been so off lately." She paused, her breath catching. "I don't know how to say this, but I need you to trust me, Elliot. I'm doing this for us, for our future. But it's dangerous, and I didn't want to pull you into it." "Dangerous?" The word echoed in my mind. "Dangerous?" I asked, the confusion clouding my judgment. "What the hell are you talking about, Alicia?" She bit her lip, tears finally spilling down her face. "I don't know who else to trust with this. I've been keeping secrets from you, but it's for your safety. I didn't want to drag you into something you couldn't handle." I stood there, staring at her, trying to understand what she was saying. But nothing made sense. "What do you mean for my safety? What could possibly be dangerous about whatever this is?" Alicia's eyes darted to the door, almost as if she was worried someone might overhear. "I can't explain it all now, but I need you to trust me. The man you're worried about, he's not just some random guy. He's part of a group, a network that I've been involved with for the last few months. It's bigger than anything we've ever known. And now, because of me, we're both in danger." Her words hit me like a freight train. Danger? A network? This wasn't just some affair. It was something much darker, something I never imagined could be part of our lives. I stood there, frozen, unable to process the reality of what she was telling me. What had I married into? What had Alicia been involved with that had brought us here, to this moment? I needed answers. But it felt like I was standing on the edge of something that I was too afraid to understand. I stared at Alicia, my mind struggling to piece together what she had just said. She looked vulnerable, tears streaking down her face, but there was something in her eyes, something that felt like she was holding back. I didn't know what to believe anymore. "You're telling me there's a group, some kind of network, that you've been involved with, and you didn't think to tell me?" My voice cracked with frustration, disbelief, and something else I couldn't quite name. You've been keeping this from me, this whole time? Alicia wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. I never wanted you to get caught up in it, Elliot. This wasn't supposed to be your problem. She paused, taking a shaky breath. I thought I could handle it on my own. But now I'm in too deep. I couldn't fathom what she was saying. In too deep? What did that even mean? The last few weeks flashed in my mind. Her late nights, the secrecy, the lies. But none of it made sense now. You said it's dangerous. What kind of danger are we talking about here, Alicia? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What is it that you're involved with? Her eyes flickered toward the door, as if she feared someone might be listening. I can't tell you everything, she said, her voice trembling. But there are people, powerful people, who want control. I've been working with them, but I never thought it would go this far. I felt a lump form in my throat. I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but instead, I stood there, feeling like I was losing her, losing everything. And now what? I asked, my voice raw. What happens now? Alicia looked at me, her expression torn. They want me to make a choice, Elliot, she said quietly. I can stay in this world, keep working with them, and it'll give us everything we've ever wanted. Power, money, security. She swallowed hard. Or I can walk away and risk everything. They don't let people leave once they're in, and I don't know what they'd do to us. A choice. That was the crux of it. She had to make a choice. But which one? I didn't know what to believe anymore, or who she was anymore. You're telling me that this man, this network, wants you to choose between them and me? I could feel the sting of betrayal in my chest, but it didn't stop me from asking. Is that it? Is that the danger? She nodded, her gaze unwavering. It's not just about me anymore, Elliot. It's about us. About our future. If I walk away, if I choose you, I don't know what'll happen. I took a step back, my mind reeling. How could she be involved in something so dark? And how could she even ask me to make this kind of choice? Do you even want to choose me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. After everything, after all this? Her eyes flickered with guilt, but she didn't answer. Instead, she said, I've always wanted you, Elliot. But the longer I've been involved, the more I've realized how dangerous it is to want both worlds. And now, I don't know if I can have both. The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She was right. She couldn't have both. She had to choose. And in that moment, I realized, so did I. I stood there, staring at Alicia, the air thick with everything unsaid between us. The weight of her words, the fear in her eyes, the unspoken truth, it all crashed down on me. But through it all, something inside me refused to let go of the woman I had loved for years. Despite the betrayal, the lies, and the uncertainty, I still believed in us. I don't know what this world is that you're in, Alicia, I said, my voice steady but soft. But I know what I want. I want you. I want us. We've built a life together, and I'm not going to let some network destroy that. Alicia's eyes widened, a flicker of hope passing through them. You're serious? She whispered, as if she couldn't believe I was still here, still fighting for her. I nodded. I'm serious. You've made mistakes, but I'm not going to let this be the end of us. We'll figure it out together. I don't care about the power or the money, Alicia. What I care about is you. She looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time in what felt like ages, a tear of relief slipped down her cheek. I didn't deserve you, she whispered, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this right. I stepped forward and took her hand, pulling her into an embrace. We'll face this together. No more secrets, no more lies. If we're going to fight this, we do it as a team. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on the same side again. There was still a long road ahead, and the danger wasn't over. But in that moment, I knew that we could make it through, as long as we stuck together. And as we held each other, I realized that sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most rewarding outcomes. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I had hope. Hope that we could rebuild. Hope that, together, we could start fresh. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest decision of all.